Hey everybody, Jeff Gluck here with Jordan Bianchi. You can see my coworker. Of course, if you listen to the Teardown podcast, you know what this is all about. And we've never done a video version of this, Jordan. And after I threw my hat last week in outrage at your comments, you were like, "Man, it's a shame we don't have a video version of this." And we do this on Zoom, so it was like, well, maybe we could figure out a way how to do it. And here we are. We're going to try it. I don't know if it'll be an every week thing. We'll see how it goes. You sort of look like a floating head against a black backdrop.
Yeah, black backdrop, black sweater. I don't know if that was the right thing. Who knows? But the people demanded that. Like, I can't tell you how many people are like, I wanted to see Jeff throw his hat. Like, they heard the thump and they're like, we got to see that. And I've been begging for this to happen for a while now. It just seemed like this was the time. So you got to give the people what they want, Jeff. They want to see your pretty face.
I know you're a Disney person. You know when you go on the Haunted Mansion and there's those heads, heads at the bottom? That's what you look like. Grim grinning ghost. Anyway, this starts talking to me on the podcast.
Like I don't really have a good spot to do a backdrop where I'm
at.
No,
this is very professional. I appreciate you. You brought some professional things. You had a light and everything. No, I appreciate you.
I got a nice sweater on. I mean, I'm like, I'm ready for this.
That's nice. That's nice.
I thought about wearing a tux. Like I asked you if we should wear a tux, and you were like, you completely dismissed me.
That wouldn't show up either with your black backdrop or something. I don't know.
Anyway, we could do like a Dumb and Dumber though. We could have like a blue tux and an orange tux.
How many tuxes do you think I own, Jordan? Jeez, you know I'm not a good dresser.
No.
Anyway, let's start the real podcast since none of this is going to be on there. So YouTube exclusive. I'm sure you guys are really excited about that. Yeah. Wow. All right, here we go, guys. Ready? All right, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Teardown. My name is Jeff Gluck, and I'm along with my coworker Jordan Bianchi. We are motorsports writers for The Athletic, and we are here to talk about the Phoenix race, which was won surprisingly by William Byron. Now, you wouldn't think that was surprising in the sense that he won last week, but he definitely wasn't going to win that race.
No.
But yet he did. So I it's not like he's a surprise winner in that sense, but I definitely did not see that coming, Jordan.
No, I don't think he probably did either until that last caution. I mean, it looked like that was Kevin Harvick's race, right? I mean, that was the story. And in Kevin Harvick's final season, like you knew he was going to get at least one more win. And we talked about this, and like a lot of these long goodbyes don't turn out the way you want it to. You know, Dale Earnhardt Jr. didn't win, Tony Stewart win, Jeff Gordon won, but it came later, and there was a lot of struggle to get to that point. And here's Kevin Harvick in race 4 is going to win this race. He's third in the points coming in. Like all of a sudden, you're like, whoa, this is taking on a different complexion. And then a caution came out, which I'd like to hear your thought. I didn't have a problem with it. I mean, you could say it was quick, but it was, I mean, he spun on the front stretch. Like that to me is a caution that NASCAR is going to call just about every single time. And then all of a sudden it just got away. It wasn't anything he did wrong. It's just circumstances.
Yeah. So first of all, on the caution, I wish we had gotten maybe like one more angle of it or view of it. We sort of had the sort of in progress view, and then they showed sort of a pulled back view at like the entrance to the dog leg. And you sort of never really got the sense of like, because it looked like he was able to get going again. Clint Boyer obviously had the same view that NASCAR did, because we know at Phoenix they're standing, that TV booth and the NASCAR booth are pretty much right next to each other. And he immediately was like, quick caution. This was quick caution. So I guess the thing is, this is the second week in a row where sort of a quick caution where some people, depending on your view, are like, geez, was that really necessary? I think, look, it was consistent compared to last week in terms of what they did. Mm-hmm. So maybe you're just looking for that consistency. At the same time, I do wonder if late in a race, when someone has a 5-second lead, could you not wait to see if they get going, to see if they're going to put down debris? I don't know if waiting a couple seconds, does that make a difference safety wise? I don't know. Like it definitely robbed NASCAR of a really great storyline. I mean, you can't think about that in race control and say, well, this is a really great story if we don't throw the caution. But it did. I mean, that, who knows, that could have been Kevin Harvick's last win right there. And now, like, if he doesn't win the rest of the season or something, or if he misses the playoffs,
Yeah.
or something like that, wow, people are really going to look back on that call. But it's tough. I mean, it wasn't the most eventful race, so I'm sure they're looking to that spiced it up at the end, give people something to talk about. But there's a high chance it's going to change the outcome when you press that button, and that's what happened. So I don't know. What do you
Yeah.
think?
I think you make a really good point. It would have been nice to see a different camera angle to kind of see if there was cars around him that were going to hit Harrison Burton, or he was going to be able to spin and keep going. He was throwing debris off the car, so does that warrant a caution? I I don't know. I didn't have an issue with it. And take your point, last week they called it quick. Today they called it quick. If that's how they're going to do it, then so be it. I'd rather have that than have this. Oh, are they not going to thing? If that's how they're going to call it late in the race, then so be it. But it's gonna be talked about. And in a race that didn't have a lot of excitement, I do think there's kind of a maybe subconsciously a thought process of, hey, a caution here would do us wonders, and you're not gonna get the benefit of the doubt when a situation like that comes up. I don't think in a race that wasn't the most exciting.
Yeah. And I mean, look, maybe you can say, well, Harvick should have done something differently there, but typically as the leader, you're pretty much a sitting duck with whatever call you're going to make. Does it change the outcome if Harvick takes two tires and then others take two tires and they're all more on even tires, or does everybody take four behind him once he takes two and then they just blow past him? I mean, he said afterwards that he wanted to be on offense and he agreed with their call, but they didn't make that much of a difference. He didn't even make up any ground on the first restart there.
And that's the deciding thing. And he said that too in the interview. Like, and I think that's the key thing. If he would have been able to pick up 2 or 3 spots on that restart, that's a different ballgame. Because Tyler Reddick had 4 tires and Tyler got up to third. I think if Harvick would be able to do that, we've been having a different conversation. But that first restart, he just didn't get going, and he didn't gain any spots. I mean, it was a net gain of 0.
Yeah, and he did get bottled up there, but if it was like a Darlington or Old Atlanta or Fontana, those 4 tires absolutely would have helped him blow through the field. As it turned out, 2 tires was the winning call for first and second place. Now Tyler Reddick had 4 tires. He finished third. That almost worked out for him. He ended up giving Byron the winning push though, because he had so much momentum and nowhere to go on the backstretch when they were 3 wide in front of him there. He chose to go with Byron and knocked him out into the lead. And that was the deciding factor, because honestly, Blaney could have won that had Byron not been able to get that big boost from Reddick right there.
Yeah, that was a restart and everything. And Blaney said that afterwards, it was about Reddick pushing the 24, and that was the thing that cleared it. I thought Blaney was going to do it there because he got to both restarts. It looked like he was being very aggressive, got really good restarts, and got the position he wanted to. He just couldn't get that final little oomph to get over that hurdle. Still, for Blaney, who's had a kind of a good, not the year he's wanted, but he's had good speed, but not the results. Like, to get this result was a good thing for him.
No, for sure. And there was a second there where I was going, oh wow, this would be when he was on the backstretch, and I was like, oh, could he win this? Because this would be a huge statement win for Blaney if he was able to pull this off late and sort of steal it. But ultimately, it really did feel like it was going to be Larson. I mean, even on that restart, you're going, well, okay, Larson and Byron on equal tires. Larson has great short run speed. Yeah, Byron, beat him on the initial start of the race and won the first stage, but it feels like Larson's got the car to beat today, and Larson will just pretty much take care of business. And I don't know where the radio chatter came from, like if it was on their channel 2 or not, but I was listening to Larson's scanner. It was still on the white flag lap, I think. And somebody, I think it might have been Tyler Mom, the spotter. I don't think it was Cliff Daniels, but he came on and said something like, we effed ourselves by trying to go with the 24.
It sounded like the spotter.
Yeah.
It didn't sound like Cliff.
It sounded like there was some frustration that Larson sort of followed Byron up the track to race Byron, and then that allowed Blaney to sneak underneath. That put, at the same time, Larson kind of loses momentum fighting with Byron, and then he doesn't have the advantage anymore. He doesn't have a run anymore.
But they empowered, if you go back, I mean, you heard this, because I think we're probably listening to the same thing, is like Cliff Daniels told Kyle, like, follow your instinct. Kyle was
Hmm.
asking, where do I restart? And Cliff was saying, hey, you do what is best for you. You where you're most comfortable, where you think you're going to be best to optimize the result. And it's interesting because Cliff isn't sometimes an over crew chiefer, like, you know what I'm saying, in the sense that he sometimes likes to tell the driver how to drive, which I don't know how you feel about that, but some drivers are like, let me drive. But he was telling Larson earlier in the race, like, you're screwing up turns 3 and 4. Why did you let Kevin, pass us? And but in that situation, he took his hands off and said, hey, Kyle, you do what's best. So it was interesting chatter though. It's just, that's a team that feels like for the second week in a row, they probably had they had one of the best cars, obviously. They let a win get away. They could have 3 straight wins. We could be talking about them having 3 straight wins.
Absolutely. And I think that's I'm always fond of the alternate narratives. What would we be saying if Larson had gone out? We'd say, oh, Larson, championship favorite already. Here he's hit on this car, 1 year gap between his 10-win season and the championship. But look at his form. They're fast. He's coming out with a vengeance this year. He didn't like how last season ended with his early elimination. Here comes Larson, all that stuff. And then it would be Byron, still can't quite get over the hump kind of thing, right? And Byron, he's fast, but he's just not as fast as Larson. He's always going to be kind of a B driver. Instead, the narrative is, whoa, hello, William Byron, 2 wins in a row.
Going to a
Really,
track where they won last year, by the way, too.
yeah. Although last year nobody knew what that was going to do at that
True, but he's
Atlanta
really good at super
reconfig. And
speedways, though.
yeah, no, he is for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, he really controlled that race last year.
Yes.
But also, like, it's just very impressive when you look at Byron now. His career high for a season is 2 wins, and he's got that now in the first 4 races. You would think that he's not done winning yet. Like, it would be, last year he got that second win, and then he never won again, and they kind of fell
Almost
off a
won in
cliff.
Darlington, and he almost won 3 of the
That's true.
first 12 races last year. He came with a lap and a half, and we said this after Martinsville because he dominated that Martinsville race, right? And we all said, like, man, this is, that was the first time he'd won multiple races in a season, and it's like, okay, it feels like he's getting over that hump, and then it just went the other direction. And that's why it's like I'm really hesitant to fall on the Byron, hop on the Byron bandwagon and be like, okay, like they've got it. I mean, he is really good. Like, I think he's got a lot of talent, but you got to put together. He has yet to do what a Larson has done or an Elliott has done. His teammates, where it's regular season dominance, consistency week in and week out. We have not seen that from him. We've seen it in spurts, but we haven't seen it for a prolonged stretch where he's a factor.
Well, I'll tell you what. Something Rudy Fugel said in the post-race press conference really jumped out at me, because he said that they spent a lot of time on the simulation stuff specifically for Vegas and Phoenix, because Logano showed the blueprint last year, right? You win Vegas, you make the final 4, and you don't have to worry about the next 2 races that round. And then obviously Phoenix is the championship race, and Logano won both those. Well, look who just won Vegas and Phoenix to open the year after they said they put a lot of work into it and a lot of time into it. William Byron. Very interesting. Very interesting. Now, again, it could be, a caution falls differently. We could be talking about completely different things here, but the bottom line is they did win those races. They were fast, and we'll see if they can keep it up. Like you, I'm a bit hesitant just because, it feels like you sort of been
The track
burned.
record's not there.
Sure. And a lot of it will come down to the summer too, because once you really get into the thick of the summer, if they're still, running well and winning races, okay, then you're like, okay. But you would also think, as I said, Byron's probably not done winning. Larson is going to win multiple races this year.
Yep.
I would think that when Chase Elliott comes back, he is going to win not just one, but multiple races before the cutoff. It's feeling like a very Hendrick-ish type season coming up.
And that's my big. No, that's my big takeaway from this race is, Byron winning everything, but it's Hendrick. It's the speed that Hendrick has had in his cars company wide. Like, it's just not one of them hitting on it, which we've seen past. It's, you look at today, like Larson was great, Byron was great at the beginning, good in the middle, executed at the end. Josh Berry had a really, really impressive comeback. I mean, like, he was bad at the beginning, and I was like, well, wait a second, feels like Vegas again. Like, his 3 teammates are running well, and he's not. He came back and finished 10th. Like, that's a nice, gritty effort for a guy who's just making his second start with a top tier team. Really good job for him, and a clean day too. And then Bowman, who we haven't really talked about much, like, was quiet, but leaves with a top 10 finish. Only driver to finish in the top 10 in all 4 races. And oh, by the way, he's atop the point standings for the first time in his career. Like, Hendrick has got speed in the race cars, and that's a big thing. It feels like, I don't want to say the parity is gone in NASCAR. I'm not ready to go there yet, but it certainly feels like it's kind of going back to how it normally was before last year, where an organization hits on it and they tend to kind of gobble up a bunch of wins. Hendrick right now feels like that organization. It feels like they're going to keep winning for a while.
Yeah, and I tell you what, I mean, Chevy's won the first 4 races now. Hendrick seems to have speed. There was, when Kyle Busch started off the season so well for those first 3 races, including the Clash, you're like, oh, well, maybe they're going to be, they haven't been quite the same. Trackhouse, it seemed like they missed it a little bit this weekend. They're not quite as fast as I thought they were going to be, because last weekend at Vegas too, they didn't quite have what I was expecting. And Hendrick,
top,
though,
which is weird though, but they're still top 10, like, right, which is crazy to think about. Like, yeah, like, we're talking about Trackhouse, like, kind of, I'd say underwhelming, but like, Chastain isn't up front like he has been, but he's been running well. He just, again, second week in a row too. He was going to finish top 10 last week, got shuffled back on that crazy restart, and then today the restart did him in too with him and Denny. So it's a little misleading, but you're right. They don't have the overall speed that they necessarily had week in and week out last year. And again, early.
Yeah, but I mean, he led 1 lap today, and that was only on a green flag pit cycle. I mean, it wasn't like he was a threat to get up there and win races. So it just feels like it's very Hendrick heavy right now. However, something seems like it's about to happen potentially, right? So in case you haven't been paying total attention this weekend to all the news, Friday, before anybody goes through inspection, Jordan, which is another interesting wrinkle for this, NASCAR goes around the garage and they start feeling all the louvers, which the louvers are like these little hood vents. They're a little bit different for each manufacturer in their hoods for the design of the manufacturer. And so here's I guess the backstory on this is, from what I understand, the obviously all the parts in the next gen car are single source supplier parts, right? So the parts that these teams have been getting from the supplier are not exactly consistent. Apparently there's been a little bit of a problem with having them all come out the same way and having them fit where they're supposed to fit in the same way. However, NASCAR, they've dealt with this before with this next gen car so far, right?
Yeah.
And
they did it last year with the wheels.
And that was an exception, because that was the first race with this, and it was important to get those wheels on safely. And that's why they didn't penalize Penske and RFK last year at the time for the wheel holes, right? Later in March, RFK tries to repair a tail panel that they weren't supposed to repair. They didn't have enough tail panels, and they tried to make the repair themselves instead of sending it back through the process. They didn't do it the right way. They didn't do it, and NASCAR found it had been modified. They get the 100-point penalty, huge fine, crew chief suspension. Then in July, Front Row Motorsports gets a similar penalty for modification of a single source supplier part, another 100-point penalty, another big suspension, fine, all that stuff, right? So now NASCAR supposedly they already know that these louvers are not consistent or fitting the right way. And they've told the teams, though, like, hey, like, chill, like, we're going to fix this. It's getting fixed. Nobody mess with this in the meantime. And they need to do a check. So apparently that's why they went around and checked before even the inspection. Well, guess who had messed with them? All 4 Hendrick cars. At least supposedly, it seems like they were messed with. So NASCAR ends up letting them practice with them, because if they had pulled them out before practice, they wouldn't have been able. They probably would have all missed practice. They let them practice with it. They were all fast. They get the other ones back in that are not the ones that they brought, and obviously Hendrick was still fast. So it's not like that was the reason they were fast, as Jeff Gordon pointed out in the post-race press conference.
But it
However,
doesn't matter.
exactly. So
And
now
that's the thing.
what do you do? What happens here, Jordan?
Well, I get it all depends, right? I mean, NASCAR is very clear on this. With the third party parts, you cannot modify, alter them in any way. It is very straightforward, and they're very adamant about this. So it comes down to, were they improperly modified or altered in a way? If they were, and they didn't have that, and Hendrick didn't have NASCAR approval, it's cut and dry. It's a penalty. Like that. That's it. That's the case. So it depends on what NASCAR determines back at the R&D center. It depends on the conversations that exist, and we don't know the answer to this, that have been going on between the teams and NASCAR, saying, hey, these aren't properly fitted. What do we do? NASCAR said, hey, you can do A, B, C, but don't do D, E, and F, right? But as you know, like teams, once you give them a little bit of leeway, if you give them A, B, and C, sometimes they like to go into D. And so I guess it just all depends on those conversations. And last year, when you go back to RFK and the wheels at Daytona, that was the conversation. Brad's like, no, Brad Keselowski was like, no, we talked to NASCAR. We told them this. And NASCAR was like, no, well, there wasn't clear communication. And that's kind of how RFK skated, right? And now, so it depends on what the conversations are and how far Hendrick may be over modified. So I don't know the answer to that question. We're not going to know until probably Tuesday, when the penalties are issued, to see what happens, if anything.
Well, and that's again where, the narrative for this changes, right? Because we're talking here,
Yeah.
Alex Bowman's the points leader. Everything's going great. Like Hendrick's on a roll. Well, if they all get 100-point penalties,
Changes the game.
none of them are going to finish. None of them are going to win the regular season title. We already know Chase Elliott's not going to. And that's going to hurt them playoff point wise. And another wrinkle, and I don't know, we don't know what the penalty will be, and we don't know if it'll be the same penalty, but it's worth pointing out that if they keep the penalties the same as what was to RFK and to Front Row last year, part of those penalties was a deduction of 10 playoff points if those teams made the playoffs. Now, neither of them did, so it never came up and it wasn't a thing. But if you suddenly say, okay, well, by the way, we're also taking playoff points away from you guys. We're looking at William Byron right now. He's got a ton of playoff points, right? He's been in stages. He's won 2 races. All of a sudden, you take 10 playoff points away from him. There's his 2 wins at least gone, right? And you say, okay, well, he's 4th in points. You're going to drop him 100 points. So again, this is early, but if you dropped William Byron right now 100 points, he would go from 4th in points to 32nd in points, it looks like. So now I guess other people would drop with him, but
he's got the win. He's locked in. But I will say this: go like the nine. No,
I'm not. Right? I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that he wouldn't be locked in, but you get playoff points for finishing top 10 regular season. So all of a sudden, all 4 Hendrick cars are looking at, we have a lot. Like we've been saying, like last week we talked about, Chase Elliott's gonna have a lot of work to do playoff points wise when the playoffs start. He's gonna have to win his way through. Well, now all 4 Hendrick cars would have to do that. So you can talk about them having a dominating season and, look what great position they're in, look how fast they are. But if they get to the playoffs and they've all had a points penalty or something, and they have all lost playoff points, it could be a more wide open playoffs, even if the season is Hendrick heavy.
I would think in that scenario, I feel confident. I mean, obviously we know Byron's locked in. I mean, presumably he'll have at least 1 win he can use for playoff eligibility, because we don't know whether this win's going to count or not.
No, this one will. This win will, because
you're right. You're right. This win. So he's locked in with 2 wins for sure. Presumably Larson's going to get locked in at some point and win. I would think that Elliott is as well, and Bowman should be as well, but you don't know. And it opens up the possibility of, if you hit a rough patch and things go sideways for you, you don't know. You don't have those points to fall back on just in case you need to, and that's one less safety net. That can be scary.
Yeah, for sure. And then, not to mention if you've got crew chief suspensions in that, with like, if they do a penalty again, it could be all 4 crew chiefs gone. I mean,
the nice thing with Hendrick though is they have a very deep crew chief roster. Like they keep old crew chiefs like in the cooler somewhere. Kevin Mendering and Greg Ives and Canals, like all these guys, like they'll be called. All those guys will be back at the racetrack next week in Atlanta, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Now the other thing is, okay, so what happens now if NASCAR has conversations with Hendrick and they go, okay, you know what? After talking about it, maybe we're not going to penalize or whatever. Hendrick makes a compelling case of why this shouldn't. I tell you what, the accusations of bias would be off the charts. And it puts NASCAR in a tough situation because remember, the teams in the garage are already upset, or have been at least, about Hendrick's involvement with the Garage 56 program, right? They're already like, well, wait a minute, how come Hendrick's doing this? How come you pick Hendrick to do this? And they've, the manufacturers told us at Daytona, hey, look, they've been transparent about sharing information. They let us come to the test. But there's still a perception of like, well, wait a minute here. Like, what's Hendrick
100%.
gaining from this? So
I'll even go back further than that. You go back to pre-next gen car when Hendrick Motorsports was having so much success on the road course. Elliott was winning a lot. Larson started winning a lot. And there was, I've had so many crew chiefs from Ford and Toyota and other people in those camps like say to me, why they're having this success? They're basically skirting NASCAR's testing ban because of their
track attack
exactly.
program.
So and they're like, oh, NASCAR's letting them get away with it. So like, there's already this perception on top of the Garage 56 thing that Hendrick can get away with whatever it wants, right or wrong. That's the perception.
Yeah, and so if you're NASCAR, first of all, I would think if you were Hendrick, you already have to be aware of that. Like, hey guys, like if we put NASCAR in a situation like this, we're probably going to get hit because NASCAR can't afford to like let us be like, okay, that's fine. Or and I think too, I think just with the consistency now of the 2 100-point penalties, that precedent's been set. They've got to do something when you're found to have modified a part. If NASCAR really sees that they have modified it once they scan it at the R&D center and all this stuff. But it sounds like, they wouldn't have taken them if they, they spotted something, right? So, I don't know. I feel like NASCAR's pretty much, their hand's been forced. I guess I would be surprised if we come onto the podcast next week and we're like, oh yeah, it was all good.
The only way I can see this is if there was some documented evidence of Hendrick saying, no, we went to you guys. We tried to lay this out and you guys didn't respond, or you kind of tactfully gave approval or something of that nature. Kind of, again, like what RFK did, like kind of a technicality away. Other than that, like to your point, I agree. Like, I don't see how you can get around this. It is very clear on what you can and can't do. And anything outside of that they're going to come after you.
Yeah.
But it's going to be interesting. It gives us something to talk about, at least, instead of a race that wasn't maybe the most exciting.
Well, it's just again, the narrative will change, but it doesn't make again, it would be one thing too, if like they had taken those away and all of a sudden they'd gone from super fast in practice to like 20th or something. And it'd been like, look at that. Those cheating Hendrick guys. Yeah. But I think since
it didn't matter, apparently.
It didn't. Now I will say, and I want to go back to Kevin Harvick for a minute here, because I feel like we mentioned at the top and we didn't really get to dive into it. What does it tell you that, first of all, it didn't feel like anybody was going to be able to beat Larson or Byron today. Then on a long run, Harvick takes his time, tracks Larson down, tracks him down, and he had a better long run car. Like he got past him. I think that was the only like true on track pass during a run, not aside from a restart today, in terms of for the lead. So that was really impressive. And it gave me a lot of optimism, I guess, for Harvick's final season, because as you touched on, we've seen guys, you look, and I'm not going to get on you for this because I think it's a perfectly valid thing, but you picked Harvick to miss the playoffs. We were talking about our Slack channel today, right? And I could see why somebody would think that. Like he's 47 years old. The final years that these guys have had for a lot of these older drivers are not great. Their performance falls off. Harvick, except for that one, sort of great 2-win back-to-back thing last year. He could have had a couple winless seasons, basically, right? Almost like a Jimmy type scenario. I think it was definitely a question of, okay, could he win this year? And is he going to make the playoffs? We still don't know if he's going to, but it looked like he was going to have the car to do it at his best track. It would have been, his 10th career win there, extending his own record, his 61st win. He would have won for, to bookend his career, first season and last season. Maybe that'll still happen, but
you don't know.
Yeah. And I tell you what, though, like the performance was there, though. So, and it hasn't been for Stewart-Haas this year.
No, I mean, he continues to carry the ball for Stewart-Haas Racing, and they were better today. Let's make sure. No, like Briscoe had a nice rally back today. Ryan Preece had a decent finish. Almirola had a wheel issue, and he was a non-factor, but they were better today. But it has been a struggle for this organization, and really for the last few years, it's been Kevin Harvick and everybody else in that team, and it hasn't been good. And it's interesting why this organization has just had this disconnect between you've had one team that's been great consistently, and other three teams have been really more lackluster than anything. I mean, they've had their moments, but I wrote about in the Athletic this week. Only since Kevin Harvick joined the organization in 2014, only twice has two drivers been able to win multiple races other than Harvick in the same season. Like, it's crazy. Kurt Busch did it one year, and then Clint Boyer. Like, you look at the Gibbs and the Penske's and the Hendricks, like what makes them great is across the board, they've got deep benches of guys who win multiple races a year on the regular and contend for the title. That's not the case at SHR. It's Kevin Harvick, and that's it. And if he's not in championship contention, they don't have anybody else that's a legit title contender.
Yeah, you're right. All great points. And again, like, Briscoe did take a step up today.
He needed that.
Maybe something to build on. He finished 7th. Preece, I didn't think he was going to get up there for a while, but he ends up getting up to 12th. I had tweeted that, when Almirola had his issue, that I was kind of disappointed with his day. And then a lot of people said, well, he has been moving up since from the bottom 30s. And I thought, well, maybe it is premature to say that. So, but you don't know what happened with him. But I thought he was going to be, he's really good on like the 1 mile track. I mean, he won New Hampshire that 1 year. Where you're like, wow, he really came out of nowhere here.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought this seemed like an SHR type track with Briscoe's win last year and everything, and Harvick's history. But
Ford strong here.
Yeah. And so you don't know what would happen with Almirola, but they looked better overall today. We don't know whether that's Phoenix. We don't know whether that will translate to the other short track package races. But something to build on. Also, something to build on for Tyler Reddick, who has had a pretty rough start to the season. Ends up finishing 3rd. The other Toyotas, I mean, gosh, was he the only Toyota in the top 10?
Yeah, Denny Hamlin ran in the top 10 all day.
Right. He was going to finish top 10 until his thing with Chastain.
Yeah, exactly. So that's hard to knock him a little bit. Bell had a good run too.
Today. That's right. I see Bell in 6th. You're right. Bell's
yeah,
in
6th, so they were good, but they didn't have race winning speed. None of them did. Like, they were good, but they didn't have race winning speed. They were clearly they're lacking something there. And then Martin Truex Jr. they flat missed it today.
That was weird. That was really bad. I felt pretty embarrassed that I picked him on our, each week with our picks on the Athletic, try to give people what we think is going to happen. This one, we had to pick before practice, and obviously I would pick Larson.
Like, you can't beat yourself up on that.
No, it was not.
No, I mean, you looking at the outcome. I'm looking at the process. You're looking at the outcome, and your process was correct. Like, Truex is good here. They have a good program. They ran well at the Coliseum, which there are a little bit of similarities. Like, it's not a bad pick.
Boy, they were not there today. No. I will say, Keselowski, unfortunately, he finished 18th. Wow. I don't know what happened.
He slid through his last pit stop. He slid through his pit stall a little bit.
Oh, I missed that.
And everybody was, obviously doing 2 tires and everything. It cost him. And that was unfortunate because he had an average running position today, I think, of like 6th or 7th. And he had finished, I think, 18th. It wasn't indicative of how well he ran. He really, that was arguably, outside of a super speedway where he's been great at, since, like, that was probably his best all-around race since joining RFK, maybe.
I mean, they look good. Or they look much improved.
They qualified well, they raced well, like, they did everything well. Like, they've turned the corner. Like, I mean, it's early, but
I mean, I'm not saying they're going to win a race, but
they're running. Brad's running consistently. I mean, he's not running great, but he's running well. He's doing the things that, like, put his team in the position of, hey, if there are 12 winners this year and 4 playoff spots are going to go on points, like, he's going to be in the conversation, it feels like. And that's a big step for where this team was at, I feel like.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. I mean, he's running. Seems like he's having a top 10 car or something around there, maybe at least 5th to 10th place car
Yeah.
each week or something. So that's an improvement. Um, what did you think about? I mean, were you surprised? It's kind of funny. I think Steve Luvender clipped this on Twitter, but so I had not remembered this, but so Larry Mack, as they're coming to that final pit stop there, Larry Mack, they say, I think Mike Joyce said, would you consider doing 2 tires here? And Larry Mack says, if you do 2 tires here, you are getting fired tomorrow. And obviously, that ended up being the winning call. Was it that obvious? I mean, were they going out on a limb? I mean,
I didn't feel like it. Did you? Like, I didn't feel like it. Like, I mean, I say this because you made the point of like, this isn't, to me, Phoenix is not Fontana. It's not Darlington. It's not Old Atlanta, where like 4 tires after 1 lap, fresh tires can be all the difference, And I felt like if you made a gamble here, like it's worth it. It's kind of what we said a week ago. Like I thought more people last week should have gone 2 tires. This isn't a clear cut and dry track of like tire wear is that bad. I'm not saying over a long run, obviously over a long run, over a 10, 15 lap run, I want 4 tires. But for an overtime late race restart, 2 tires doesn't seem like that big of a gamble.
and that's exactly why I brought this up. I mean, we were screaming for people to stay out last week, right?
Yes.
We were saying, oh, good on James Small, good for Truex for staying out. Why didn't more people stay out? So, yeah, the idea that everybody would come down and just take 4 tires. I actually was surprised that Eric Jones didn't stay out, because Eric Jones had run his cycle longer. And he pitted and he only had, let's see what the thing says, if my monitor still works here, in terms of like the last pit stop. Shoot, sorry, I lost my
Way to go. Way to go.
Yeah. It's not showing up. Basically, I was thinking that, because he ran his long and he only had I think he pitted for the last time with 30 to go, and everybody else had pitted with like 60-ish to go or something, right? So I think he had about 30 lap fresher tires because he ran his cycle so long.
Yeah.
So I was like, I wonder if he could even stay out and see if he could do something with that. Yeah.
He finished 21st, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, I liked his gamble. I like the gambles.
I do too. Like for
why
teams
don't more
like
people do
that, like
yeah,
you've got to win. You've got to figure out a way to steal one. More likely you're gonna figure out a way to steal one to get the playoffs. Like, go for it. And I thought it was I was appalled that they didn't do it last week, more teams. And I feel like maybe the crew chiefs watched that. Maybe they watched the end of that race and are like, oh man, that's on us. Like, and they learned from it. Cause to me, when everybody's coming off pit road on 2 tires, I'm like, that's good. Good for you. That's the way to do it. I will say, I also get Kevin Harvick's decision on like taking 4. Like there are some drivers who just want to be in attack mode and go for it. And he is one of those guys who, when you say attack and go for it, like he's good at that.
Well, and Rodney Childers, it sounded like they still had some confidence when he came off pit road, because Rodney Childers comes on the radio and he's like, hey, you're the first car with 4 tires. And then, they talked about something else. And then he said, like the other ones that took 2, he said, they've got 59 laps on their left sides or whatever. And, I think they thought that was going to be more of a factor than it was.
I agree. And I will say this, I think a restarts at Phoenix can be chaotic, but you can make up positions pretty quick. So it's like, it's in their defense, like I get it. Like, hey, and Kevin Harvick's a great restarter, right? Like okay, we're gonna give our guy 4 tires, we're gonna tell him to get after it. We know he's aggressive. You can dive down and cut corner, you can get positions here. It's like, okay, yeah, we probably maybe need one more caution to come our way, but like we're in a good spot. And again, it goes back. I feel like they would have won this race, or really good shot at winning this race, if Kevin would have gotten a better restart than he did in that first overtime restart.
Jordan, we touched on the quality of the racing, but I think we should dive into it a little bit more, because there was a lot of hype about the short track package. This was supposed to be a fix. I don't know if it's supposed to be the fix, but it's supposed to be a fix. The drivers were very optimistic that you could move around more, that it would help with passing, that it would help widen things out. And I mean, from my view, it pretty much felt like the typical Phoenix race. Now, maybe it makes a difference at some of the other short tracks, Martinsville or Richmond. I don't know. But I didn't see anything today that I was like, oh, thank goodness they made this change. This is so much better. Oh, wow. I mean, William Byron in his winner's press conference says, yeah, you still couldn't pass anybody. Dirty air was still a big problem. So what do you think? What do you think of the package?
I don't know. I mean, from my untrained eye, I felt like drivers were slipping and sliding a little bit more today, which is good because you want these cars to be harder to control. And so it felt like the cars were sliding around. They didn't have as much aero dependency on the car. But everybody was saying up and down, like you couldn't pass today. So it doesn't matter whether the cars are slipping or sliding or not if you can't pass. You can't make passes. And when somebody would get behind somebody, it's almost like they got stuck. That's why like Kevin Harvick actually able to reel in Larson and then able to pass him. Like it was crazy to watch. And like the Fox's reaction when it happened, their booth kind of told you the story of like of the race, which was people couldn't pass. And all of a sudden, like Harvick, who despite being faster, it shouldn't be a surprise that the guy who's running you down over a long run and is faster passes you for the lead. But everybody was acting like kind of justifiably like this was crazy to watch because you couldn't pass. So I don't know what this means for Martinsville and Richmond and some the other tracks they're going to use this on. It's a little bit different maybe, but today wasn't great. Like it was a very typical Phoenix race. And my big thing is not so much the package or whatever. It's like I'm just kind of why does this track have two dates? Like why are we so enamored with this race? Like I'm not saying don't go to Phoenix. You need to go to Phoenix. Good market, good crowd, sellout crowd today. But like, what is the racing quality here that justifies Phoenix having two dates?
Well, they spent a lot of money on this track to redo it,
That's all.
first of
That's
all.
it. That I mean that's
But
it though. But that's it. But like in terms of like quality, and at a time when NASCAR's done a lot of things, great things with the schedule, and move dates from tracks that maybe weren't offering the best racing, and tried to add new variety and quality. Like this is something that needs work on, and now as you start to look at this reconfigured schedule going forward, you're looking at this going, okay, this to me, you hear a lot about Richmond, losing a second date. Like, and I'm not saying it shouldn't do that because it should, but like Phoenix kind of deserves to be in that consideration as well.
I mean, it's tough because I feel like there's been some good Phoenix race. Like, remember when they put the 750 horsepower package back after that? We'd seen that 550 package, and it was the year before the championship race, right? The year before the championship race, when it was the penultimate race, it
Yeah,
was a terrible race. Then they
2019.
right, and then they're like, oh, look, oh gosh, the championship race is going to be here next year. We've got to do something. And then NASCAR ended up being like, yeah, that race was so bad, we're going to give them the 750 package at the short tracks, right? And I thought that made it better right away, and it made it more intriguing. I remember, Jamie McMurray on Door Bumper Clear last fall. I think it was in the offseason episode that he was on, where he's like, Phoenix has never had a good race in 20 years. And I'm not saying Phoenix is a great track, even if you give them the ideal package, but I think there's a way to get it better. But what we saw today, I have really pretty much no optimism that the championship race, when we come
No,
back there in November, is going to look any better than last year's championship race or this race. Or look, we know the restarts are crazy. Whoa, they're diving on the apron. Oh, 4 or 5 wide, what's going to happen? That is crazy. I mean, it looks really cool, but as soon as they get sorted out, pretty much that's
yeah, give them 5 laps and they're single file and can't pass. Then what? Like, and you
right.
get these long stretches of green flag racing. It's tough, and when you've got the championship race here, this needs to be a driver's track. This needs to be a track like Homestead where like a driver makes the difference. He's finding lines. How close do you run to the wall? Do you push it? Do you conserve? Can you save tires? Like that, none of that really feels like it applies here. And that's not what you want out of your championship finale. And so it's really frustrating to watch because I don't think if you saw the race today, you're going to think, man, can't wait for them to come back in November for this championship. Man, that's going to be exciting. Like that's not good. And great. I'm really glad that they sold tickets and people in the market are responding. That's great. but you still got to have a good product for the folks sitting at home watching. And I don't think the folks sitting at home watching today got a great product.
Yeah, I mean, they got that caution at the end. They got,
And that's the thing.
know,
Like, I don't mean to cut you off. I mean, I'm sorry, but like, and so that's kind of the thing is like, I feel like kind of maybe the case last week of people are like, oh, they're just going to remember the finish and the craziness or whatever. Oh, that came down last lap pass, whatever. Like, and they're not going to remember the stuff before that. So maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe that's all that matters is the last few laps. And if you get that caution and you get the wild restart and craziness, like that's it. And it doesn't matter what happens before that. But I do feel like I think it matters. I don't. This is purely my opinion. I don't have anything to back it up, but I think the television ratings reflect that recently. And like people want to see good racing throughout and they want to build up to like the finish. It doesn't, you just don't want to like, I don't want it to feel like this is a bad comparison, but like you always hear about basketball, right? I only got to watch the last 30 seconds. You don't want it to feel like that in NASCAR. Like I only got to tune in for the last 10 laps because I know I'm going to get a caution and then that race is going to go into overtime. You want it to matter throughout.
Jordan, let's say NASCAR comes out and goes, we've decided to give the 2024 Cup Series championship race to Phoenix again. What's your reaction if that happens? See, I'm glad we have video. We're trying video for the first time for those of you listening to the podcast. I hope people can see you're shutting your eyes and shaking your head and rubbing your eyes beneath your glasses.
I don't think that does anything. And I just don't. I don't think it puts it's all about positioning your sport to be the most successful. And I don't feel like putting it at Phoenix is the most successful. I'm not saying it can't come back here. I am a believer that it should rotate. But go back. If it was up to me in a perfect world, go to Homestead. I love Homestead. Like, right.
I knew you were going to go there, and I'm so glad you did.
It's perfect, but and it's great. And what in an ideal perfect world, honestly, in a perfect world, like, and I know we're gonna differ on this because I know you love Fontana, but I want Fontana's remodel to go through, and that's gonna be a half-mile short track in LA. Like, that sounds really a great venue to have a championship race. So that would be, but I don't know if that's gonna happen. And so go back to Homestead, and I guess that's probably the best of both worlds, right? I mean,
I would love to go if they came out and said, all right, here's our schedule for next year. And by the way, the championship race is Homestead. The driver reaction, the fan reaction, everybody be like, oh my gosh,
everybody's gonna go crazy.
Woo, this is awesome. Yeah. All the people under the tweet would put W, and they'd put all those memes of like, here, take this dub and all that stuff. Because people would be like so happy that it's going back to Homestead. I get that, it's not the most modern track in terms of facilities anymore. It's not near a downtown or something, but damn, it has good racing, or it has. So I think it'd be great. Now, I mean, with the Auto Club thing, again, like when that news came out, compared to how I thought about Auto Club when we were there a few weeks ago, I was like, okay, yeah, I mean, Auto Club, yeah, it's been a nice 2-mile track, but hey, more short tracks, yeah. But now again, like they've pulled this lever. They have a tiny 2-inch spoiler or whatever. Aside from giving them more horsepower, which sounds like it's not going to happen.
Not happening.
So they've done what they can. I don't know what else they could do. I mean, I guess they could replace the entire underbody, but then everybody has to order. They've got to get all new parts and all this stuff.
Who's paying for that too?
Yeah, I mean, and is that even guaranteed that the short track is going to be good racing? So I guess that's my worry. Like, okay, you say, okay, we're going to get a short track for the championship race, half-mile track. Let's go. Let's decide it. And you're like, uh-oh. And now I'm saying uh-oh for North Wilkesboro. I'm saying uh-oh for the Martinsville race coming up. I mean, oh, dang, I wish this had not turned out this way, because I want to be like, woo, I can't wait. I want to be at these races. I want to see them. I'm excited. But I didn't see a whole lot today that gave me a ton of optimism. So I guess it's still got to work on it, I don't know.
It's a work in progress. And I think, my overriding, I'm not a Chicken Little. I'm not you. I say this affectionately. I'm not a Chicken Little, sky is falling, like, everything. I feel like I'm a little bit more of a step back and kind of take a look at the bigger picture on things a little bit. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. See, I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong. But I look at this and I'm like, and it's what we talked about last week. Like there is reason to be skeptical about this next gen car in a mile and a half racetracks. From what we saw at Vegas, from what we saw last fall a little bit, and you take away the intermediate, if you take away the success of this car on the intermediate tracks, and that's no longer there, and the short tracks continue to be the way they are, like what do you have left?
Great question. Great question. I mean, and that's why Kevin Harvick said you've got to keep changing up the rules package constantly with this car because teams are going to get it so quickly, and they already have. It seems like maybe even on the intermediates, not to be all Chicken Little with you, Jordan, but you know, like they've got to change it up quickly. Now the problem is, you say, well, hey, look, they threw a whole brand new package at them this weekend, and look who was good. The
Yeah,
big
you know what I would
powerhouse
do?
teams, Hendrick and all that stuff, you know?
Yeah, like I mean, I don't know if you probably can't do this because I don't know how you would officiate. Like, you almost need to get rid of Sims programs. Like, that's the only like
Well,
thing is
yeah.
like,
What do you?
but you're not going to. You can't like because that's the problem. Like, and Kevin's right. Like, you need to keep throwing teams curveballs and stuff, but it doesn't matter because these teams will go to the Sims and they will spend hours upon hours. They'll work in shifts there. Like they will. And like they will figure this out. And so it almost doesn't matter how much you almost have to have the teams roll in on a Friday, not give them any heads up, roll in on a Friday and be like, yeah, here boys, this is what we're doing this weekend. And like, set your cars up today. Like, but I don't think you can't do that. Like,
Package
so
of the week. So you'd be like, all right,
yeah, but we're gonna
we're gonna
spin the
spin a
wheel.
wheel.
Yeah, jinx.
There's a
Yeah,
7-inch spoiler this week, guys.
yeah, that's it. But that's it. Like that would be it. Like have a bit like and or have the winning. Here we go. The benefit of winning the week before is you get to pick the rules package the next week, and you don't tell anybody until like that Friday or something. I don't know. It's just you get all game show on it.
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, it seems like there's not. Look,
It's
let's
tough.
hope that in a couple months from now we're going, oh, phew, we were so worried that
I
this
hope
wasn't,
so.
you know, but it turned out okay. Now it's all good again. But just from the West Coast swing, it doesn't feel that way at the moment. So
It doesn't like, and it's weird. It's like we go to Atlanta next week, and then you got Coda. So really, these next 2 weeks, you're not going to know. I mean, I mean, I guess Coda a little bit because it's a road course package and everything like that. I don't know. I don't think you're gonna be able to take too much away from that. So you're really not going to know anything until you've got a stretch where you've got Richmond, Martinsville, and Kansas kind of within like 5 weeks there. I feel like by mid-May we're gonna have a really good idea of where this package or this I'm sorry, this not well this package and this car are at on short tracks, intermediates, and road courses to a lesser degree.
well, it seems like we already have more of an idea than we had last year again.
I know
So
we're gonna have a bigger
uh,
sample size though. Like,
I understand
instead
it's a more of a
yeah.
confirmation to see if we're
Yeah.
right, if we're correct of what we're saying right now or not. So we will find out. Jordan, you are 2-0 on the Was It a Good Race poll. I have missed both times since we've been doing it this season. What are people going to say? I was way more pessimistic than everybody else was last week. I think I said like 30% for Vegas, and it turned out to be in the 40s or, 49 or something, right? Yeah. So, and you were in the 40s, so you were a lot closer than I was. So I will let you go first to pick this. What do you think? What are people going to say about Phoenix?
Uh,
It's a
I'm gonna
tough
say
one.
45. I'm gonna say 45%. And I say that because I think the expectations were that this was going to be a different kind of race, that this rules package was going to be a game changer, and it was going to give Phoenix better quality racing, more side by side passes, more lead changes. And instead, you've got really three drivers, Harvick, Byron, and Larson, dominated today. It never felt like really that any one of those guys was going to win. It wasn't the race that I think people wanted, and Phoenix doesn't have the best reputation, so I'm going to say 45%.
Well, I thought this was kind of like a little bit better race than Vegas was.
Sure.
And that got 49. So just based on that, I think I just might go like 50.
Sure.
I don't really, again, I don't have necessarily like a compelling reason why, because I didn't think it was that great. But I mean, you had Larson dominating, but then Harvick was able to track him down, and up until 10 laps to go or whatever, it's like, wow, this is like Harvick. This is a great storyline. And then caution comes out. That storyline goes away. Looks like Larson's going to win. That storyline goes away. Byron wins instead. So, I mean, you had enough maybe to give people something. It wasn't amazing. I mean, there was 10 lead changes all day, 6 different leaders, 5 cautions, and there was nothing that jumped out about it where you're like, that was awesome. But yeah, I guess just because people were kinder than I expected last week, I will think that they might be a little bit kinder this week, and I'll go 50. I don't know.
I mean, it was better than Las Vegas, but that's not saying much. But I also say, I don't know.
The expectations were higher for this one too. Well, the expectations were high for Vegas too.
High for Vegas, yeah. I don't know.
1.5.
I'm very curious to see. I don't know. I don't think people are going to vote favorably for this. I just don't. I'm very curious to see how they end up voting for this, though.
Well, I think I've made it through this whole episode without being rude or obnoxious to you, which I got. Wow, boy, a lot of people did not like how I shut down your Chase Elliott opinion last week. Although then you went on Door Bumper Clear, my favorite podcast, and picked me as your idiot of the week. Wow, what a low blow.
In my defense, there really wasn't an overwhelming. There was no overwhelming candidate, and I even told everybody in the crew, I'm like, hey, I need some help here, guys. We took a break, and I'm like, guys, I need help. Like, I don't have an idiot of the week. Like, I don't. And it was like, we started looking through the lineups and everything for the Xfinity race, the Truck Series race, the Cup race. Like, nothing is jumping out. And then someone's like, why don't you just name your buddy Jeff? I'm like, perfect, done.
Yeah, easy for you, because you wouldn't want to name Chase Elliott, because that would be a great career move to call Chase Elliott your idiot of the week.
I don't think it warranted him being called an idiot of the week.
Well, you said that you should, all the clips that came out. By the way, one of the clips, probably the most viral clip, is you talking about the dating advice, which our listeners already know about, the copy and paste. We named an entire episode copy and paste, but then you spread that to the Door Bumper Clear platform while having your shirt like almost all the way unbuttoned.
Thirst trap.
Thirst trap? Oh,
Thirst
okay.
trap.
You're just trying to lure in the ladies with that video clip?
I was looking good. I mean, I know they film theirs, they got to be on TV and be on camera. You want to make sure you look the part.
Well, we're trying to film this for YouTube, and you look like a floating head against a black backdrop. So you don't think that people are going to watch our YouTube thing? And
I got my cashmere sweater on today.
You can't tell. It looks like you're part of the backdrop.
All right, duly noted.
Okay. Well, I don't really know what else. I mean, we don't have F1 to talk about this week. We don't have what are you saying?
I'm just saying, like, if you're listening to this because of Door Bumper Clear, you can go back. We did talk about dating advice in a previous episode, so you can catch up.
Yeah, because who wouldn't want dating advice from you, a single man who's never been married in his 40s? Great job.
Yeah, I'm doing it right, Jeff. Doing it right.
All right,
I can't tell you how many married people, by the way. I have like so many married friends of mine. They're like, God, I envy you.
Jeez, you should out those people.
No, you're not one of those people, by the way. Just FYI.
Yeah, tell my wife. Jeez. All right. So I mean, before we go, any reaction to Jenson Button and Kimi Räikkönen?
Cool.
Running the COTA race along with Jordan Taylor. I have a lot
Connor Daly.
Yep.
I think COTA all of a sudden has turned into like a glorified IROC race in some respects. I think it's really cool that you're going to see these guys, and good for Jordan Taylor, because we've heard, he's been close. He's wanted to do this for a long time, and been close a couple times. And depending on who you talk to, the opportunities were there, and they couldn't get across the finish line. So really happy to see him get an opportunity that he frankly deserves. Like, he really worked hard on this. He's put the time in, and you talk to the Chevy guys, like, he's been instrumental in helping them develop the car, get better being at road courses and stuff. So I'm really curious to see how he does. And Jenson coming over and doing this, I think it's great. I think it's great to see Jenson there, and Kimi. We can talk about this car and everything else we just talked about, right? But you can say is like, this car undisputedly has opened the door for more international drivers to come over and and the addition of road courses is allowed them to feel more comfortable coming over here to try their hand at it. And that's a good thing, because all of a sudden a race where we kind of look at it, we're like, oh, okay, they're going Dakota, it doesn't really have any buzz about it. It's just a race, right? All of a sudden takes on a different dimension. Like, oh, Kimi's going to be there. Cool. Jensen's going to be there. Oh, Connor Daly's going to run that too. Like, it's cool. Like, Jordan Taylor's going to be like, that's fun. Like, you want that feel. I always talk about how you want to make races events and exciting. Like, this is all of a sudden taking on a different look.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And really the car does get a lot of credit for that, right? Because, it's basically a sports car. And when you tell guys from international racing, especially ones who have done some sports car racing, like, hey, this could be somewhat familiar to you. It's not just like the old stock car that we used to have with sort of the more dinosaurish technology. Like, this is more relevant. And the fact that it is a spec car, and it is, that you're going to be able to get into the same equipment. Now, we know that some cars are still faster than others, but it's at least the same parts and pieces. That's something to be optimistic about, so that, when Jensen Button's driving for Rick Ware Racing, even though it's, pretty much a Stewart-Haas effort, you're like, okay, you're going to have the same stuff as Hendrick, right? I mean, different engines, but you have the same parts. So I think that makes it easier.
Can I say this too? I think it's great too that Coda's got practice. They're going to have practice on a Friday. So these guys who are coming over here are going to have more opportunities to get familiar with this, because you can't test and actually get on the racetrack. So by the time you qualify on Saturday, you'll have a pretty good amount of laps on the track. I think I'm genuinely excited to watch practice and watch qualifying, to watch these guys and how they get, if they can improve and what they're doing. And like, you look at a guy like Jordan Taylor, and like, I don't think any of these guys are going to win the race, but I think it's going to be fun to watch Jordan Taylor and Kimi, particularly because they're going to have some experience with this of what they can do.
Totally agree. Well, first we've got Atlanta next week. You will be there to see if it's can replicate some of the excitement from last summer where Corey LaJoie and Chase Elliott went at it. I don't know. Maybe we'll see, or maybe it'll be a straightforward William Byron win again.
3 in a row for William.
Yeah. We'll see what happens next. But everybody, of course, we appreciate you as always for listening, and we will talk to you next time on the Teardown. See you, everybody.